What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy Show with me, your host, Tera Roberts. This is the official Mailbag Show podcast for Player Profiler. It is Wednesday, September 17th. Yay. I'm taking your questions live. We're going to dive right in because I got the notification from Amazon that Gen V just dropped. So guess what I'm doing after the show here? Going to watch a little Gen V season 2. Let me guys know if you like that. I love that show. And I'm like, I can't wait for The Boys season 5 to come out. Lots of good drops. I'm watching Only Murders in the Building. I like TV shows. I'm not a big movie person. I'm a TV show person here. But we're going to go ahead and dive right in. This week's topic is rookie panic. And of course, you can drop your comments and I will be answering your questions live in the chat because that's what I'm here for. And I'm going to answer one right off the bat. Hey, what's up, Jerry? I'm going to answer one right off the bat from CMAS. So guys, go ahead and jump in the chat because this question was dropped 1 minute before the show even went live. So I'm giving you priority there because you got in early. So let's start it off with you. From CMAS, which two would you play? Keon Coleman, Matthew Golden, Troy Franklin, and Travis Hunter. That's an interesting little group there, right? Coleman, obviously massive week 1 production, came down last week. That one I kind of predicted just because it profiled as a game that was going to have a lot less pass volume for everybody. Matthew Golden, he's on the field. Targets are going his way. He just hasn't connected with Jordan Love yet. We hope that he can get more volume there with the injury to Jayden Reed. Then we've got Troy Franklin coming off the big day this Sunday. And then Travis Hunter, who has been underwhelming thus far. Travis Hunter is a tough one. I'm going to go ahead and nix him out just because while in theory, talent, right, upside is the wide receiver 2 there. I don't know. We have to get more information this week in terms of them letting us know what kind of snap count he's going to be on. At least they've been kind of sharing. Last week, they told us he was going to play more defensive snaps. That did happen. He did, in fact, have terrible fantasy production. So, hey, Liam Cohen and them, they're being honest with us. That's fantastic. So that narrows things down to Coleman, Matthew Golden, and Troy Franklin. Right off the bat, Coleman is the immediate yes for me because we know we've seen that production before. Last week, low pass volume. This week, we should have a little bit, not massive pass volume, but at least a little bit of an increase there to where we can maybe get a more decent floor there for Coleman. And then between Matthew Golden and Troy Franklin right now, although I like Matthew Golden in theory, I am going to have to lean towards Troy Franklin because at least at this point I have seen him get targets. So it's Coleman and Franklin that I would go with. I wish I could say Golden on that one, but it is going to have to be Franklin there. From Henry Odom, who should I trade? Oh, should I trade Hampton for Swift? I would not do that. My fear there with Swift, and I had this fear heading into the season, is that, and I don't know if I was going to talk about rookies, and I can't remember if I put Kyle Monangai down there or not to talk about. I don't think I did. So let's talk about Kyle Monangai. Last week we heard that Ben Johnson wanted to get Kyle Monangai more touches. He did, in fact, do that. Now, granted, it was a blowout, so it's kind of tough to kind of assess what is real in terms of what'll carry over to a more competitive game. But Hampton or Swift hasn't looked good. Right. And my fear with that is that because Ben Johnson knows him so well, and because Ben Johnson at this point, that investment was not with his regime, right, in Chicago. As a matter of fact, they shipped off under his regime from Detroit. So I think the leash is kind of short there. Swift hasn't been effective. You know, a lot of that probably has to do with run blocking as well. I can't put it completely on him, but I would not be shocked if we saw fluctuation in his volume there in the very near future. I long-term would prefer to see Hampton. The fantasy production early has been rough. In week 1, the volume was good. It was just a bad matchup. Last week was also a bad matchup. It was just a bummer that the production came down so significantly, and then we had that increase from Najee Harris. I'm more inclined, at least, to give Hampton a chance because at the end of the day, that is a significant investment that the Chargers made into him as a running back. That's their lead back. There's just going to be kinks that they have to work out in terms of that timeshare there and increased trust there. The fumble was a bad look, right? We'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit there. But my preference there is to stick it out with Hampton because Swift's longevity in terms of the role throughout the entire season, I worry for him, especially if Chicago ends up being extremely bad, right? um, we've seen what Green Bay looks like. Fantastic. We've seen Detroit. They look fantastic outside of that game with Green Bay, right? They seem like they're still going to be at the top of the division. Minnesota is obviously a question mark because they've got JJ McCarthy that is still significantly in development there, right? Of course, he's injured. But at the end of the day, I am worried about Chicago and just how well they will actually be able to do this season. So I would not be shocked again if we see more involvement from the rookies as we move forward here. Yeah, you got the comment from A1. You got to hold Hampton here. Got to hold him. The talent, the investment. It's just the direction that we got to go there. All right, we'll jump into some more questions here. Just right off the bat, guys, before I dive into some of these questions, did want to do a quick news and injuries. Now, it's Wednesday. I will not mention anyone that popped up on the injury report this Wednesday. I'll mention Lad McConkey popped up with a biceps injury. Wednesday practice reports. I talk about it every year. You can't take too much into account. Like CMC was listed as calf and resting, right? Veterans rest on Wednesday. Wednesday is one of those weird days where everybody and their mom is going to pop up as limited in some capacity or not practicing on a Wednesday with some kind of injury. It is what it is. We don't talk about it. We want to talk about the serious injuries here. Obviously, the quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, done for our fantasy purposes. I know they're saying like, oh, December potentially, no. You got to move on from him. I mean, if you have IR and you want to stash and you have the ability to do so, but at some point you're going to need those spots. At some point you're probably going to have to drop him. Justin Fields out. That one is frustrating for me because I love this matchup with Tampa Bay. So I was hoping we could get a little redemption here, a little bounce back here from him. And unfortunately, nope. No Justin Fields. We'll have Tyrod Taylor. There are better streaming options than Tyrod Taylor, although it is a good matchup. So if you have to, I mean, you can dive in there, but it's not our preferred route there. Jayden Daniels sitting out of practice and is expected to sit out of practice tomorrow. Then they'll see what he looks like on Friday. So we don't know at this point. JJ McCarthy out. Carson Wentz will be the starter. And Brock Purdy, very interesting there. Kyle Shanahan came out and said that he has a chance to play this week. We were thinking it was going to be a multi-week thing there, which we didn't mind too much because Mac Jones was still, hey, Mac Jones can get it done, right? So we weren't too upset about that. But we could get Purdy back this week, which would be cool. Running backs, Aaron Jones, IR. I hate to say it. People saw that one coming. He just had a massive workload last season, a career high. The Vikings knew they were wrong. That's why they brought in Jordan Mason, because that type of workload on a 30-year-old running back, which is not a massive workload for other running backs, but for him, he had never had that many carries in his entire career. That was kind of crazy. So off of those kinds of years, you often get those injuries that pop up just because your body is worn down. So that's kind of not surprising there, unfortunately. Jordan Mason stepping into an excellent opportunity there. But again, it could be a weird offensive situation because we've got Carson Wentz at quarterback. And then again, just for Washington, this is the first week we're gonna see what this game plan is without Austin Eckler and what the usage of the running backs is and how much volume Ja'Cory Bill Krosky Merritt is going to get. Wide receivers, Brian Thomas Jr.'s wrist injury. I'm mildly not buying it. He was listed as a full practice today on Wednesday, so I'm kind of wondering what kind of supposed injury was this actually. Doesn't seem to be any kind of issue. Xavier Worthy, we're still unclear on him, so you got to wait around for that. Obviously, that is critical in terms of usage of other receivers in that offense. Christian Kirk could be back this week, so that's very interesting because we have not been able to use any Texans wide receiver outside of obviously Nico Collins there. And then Jayden Reed not only went under shoulder surgery, also got his foot done as well. So 6 to 8 weeks is still the timeline on that. But I mean, we don't know the details of how long the foot surgery that he was planning on playing through, what the recovery time for that would be. That'll be interesting, but it's good to see that it got all taken care of. Tight ends, Isaiah Likely. Not 100% sure if he will return this week. And then Dallas Goedert as well. We got to pay attention to that news, although the Dallas Goedert being out didn't really affect anyone positively, unfortunately, for Philadelphia in terms of opening up targets for Devontae Smith or AJ Brown. So that was a bummer. Let's do some questions here before we dive into the meat of the show. We got lots of questions here. All right, guys. We have from Raziel 820, Michael Pittman or Jameson Williams. No, Jamo got 100 yards last week, but only a couple of catches. I like the Colts matchup better, but trust you. So I will have Jameson ranked higher. I don't have my rankings up right now, do I? Let's see how quick my internet is. I lost power earlier. Weird little blip like twice in a row. Very weird. I have Pittman at... I'll move Pittman up a little bit here. But he's a wide receiver 3 for me. And Jameson Williams is a wide receiver 3, but they're very close together. I have Jameson at wide receiver 30. I have Pittman at wide receiver 36 now, but now that I look at that, I don't like that. It's more like wide receiver 31. So they're honestly like right now. Actually, I would move both of them up to 29 and 31. I lean towards going with Pittman. I do think he's in line for a bounce back week. Tennessee's secondary is interesting, right? Because they are upgraded. So it's not a bad defensive situation. Matchup is a little bit better there. Baltimore's defense can be beat through the air, but it's kind of hit or miss there in terms of attacking them. Jameson is trustworthy, not an issue. But I do think that Michael Pittman showed very well in week 1, and the dip in production that he had in week 2 was more so the matchup issue of them playing Denver. Wide receiver 1s against Denver, it's just a thing, right? It happens. So I do lean towards Pittman on that one, but it's like super, super close there between the two. I enjoy updating rankings while answering questions. Shorty, which mid to late round rookie running back would you rather have rest of season that has the chance to be the guy not named Bashal Tootin? Guys like Harvey, Giddens, Woody Marks, Caleb Johnson, Kyle Monangai, etc. So not named Bashal Tootin. I am very partial to Kyle Monangai, and I touched on it a little bit when I was talking about Swift there. I don't know that he is long for this world. Now, when you look at like direct handcuffs, right? Obviously, RJ Harvey has extreme upside if J.K. Dobbins does go down with an injury, and the likelihood of that is higher than the vast majority of backs. So Harvey is definitely the one that I have highest there. Now, of course, Harvey is not a guy that you can grab off waivers. He's somebody that you would have to trade for. But if you're looking to make an acquisition and it's not something that you need to start right now because you're grabbing him, you're not going to put him into your lineup anytime soon because he needs to earn that role with Sean Payton. And kind of more than likely, we need to see somebody in that backfield go down to open up opportunities because unfortunately, we are getting a lot of production from Tyler Bidet as well. His name always just like trips me up from Tyler Bidet as well. So we need that increased pass catching opportunity for RJ Harvey. And hopefully we can get that as the season goes on. But I think he is an interesting buy low if you're not planning on starting him there, because obviously he's just an asset that is kind of just being very underwhelming right now. Giddens, Jesus Christ, I keep saying it that way. Giddens is a good handcuff directly, but again, just exclusive handcuff would go into a high upside opportunity. Woody Marks, I do like in the same kind of vein as RJ Harvey. Nick Chubb, it's been, I don't know, like 3 years, I believe, since we last saw him play a full season. So the odds of him making through a full season, slim to none, right? Just statistically, Woody Marks can get that opportunity at some point. So that's another one that I do like. Caleb Johnson, I am very much so out on. The problem is, and there are certain organizations that have severe doghouse issues. Kyle Shanahan is one of those guys. And that's, hey, look, I'm not going to criticize them because often it's very successful coaches that have this perspective. It sucks for us as fantasy managers and fans, but from a coaching perspective, it works for them and they're very successful. And Mike Tomlin is also one of those guys as well. So I do think, unfortunately, like we saw it last year with Roman Wilson, where like he literally just X'd him out completely, inactive, just was not like having it because he didn't feel like Roman Wilson was putting forth a level of effort that he wanted to see, right? And so cut to Caleb Johnson this year. And unfortunately, I just don't think it's his year to shine. Even if we have the opportunity of Jaylen Warren going down with an injury, more than likely, I believe that Kenneth Gainwell would be the direct handcuff there. Johnson, in terms of making mistakes, and then the kickoff was definitely the killer right there. And the problem also becomes like, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw him as a healthy scratch, because once you lose value as a running back or a wide receiver in terms of special teams, and they need somebody else to fill that position, that's when you start seeing those weird inactives of them trying to move stuff around in order to prioritize people that are also contributing on special teams there. So I'm concerned about Caleb Johnson. That's not the direction. So obviously my preference there in order is RJ Harvey, Woody Marks, and then Kyle Monangai, and then Giddens. Obviously there's other options there. I mean, the bulk of the show, I did want to talk about these rookie running backs. That was kind of like the theory here of the ones that we were looking at, no, not just running backs, actually, all rookies as well. Guys that we feel good about, guys that we are having high panic about, medium, low, what kind of level are we dealing with these rookies here? So that was a perfect question for the topic there. Other guys that I think, let me see, are there any other off the top of my head that I think have the potential? No, I think that pretty much covers it of the guys that I think have the potential to go in. No, Ollie Gordon is another one as well. The only issue there is that obviously Miami is in kind of like a weird situation, although they showed better in week 2. So that was good to see that turnaround, but concerned about Miami as a whole and where that team is heading. But Gordon, I do think, is worked his way into, regardless of the injury for Jalen Wright, being the direct handcuff to Devon Achane. So that's another one that I think does have extreme upside, because while he's not in the same build as Devon Achane, I do think he can contribute well as a 3-down back there for sure. From Alec, do you think I'll be fine this week if Ladd doesn't play in my flex with Jamar and BTJ as my starting wide receivers, and then Alec and Troy Franklin on your bench? Yeah, and it's early with the injuries. It doesn't seem like it's a massive thing, but if it does turn out, my preference probably would be to lean towards Troy Franklin, just going towards the team, obviously with the more offensive upside there. But I'm okay with streaming either of those guys as an option. They've both shown that they can garner targets, touchdown upside. So yeah, you're fine. You're fine. Don't panic. You've got options there. This is perfect from Jerry Nelson, because we were going to actually have this one as one of our mailbag questions. So thank you. I did get that one. With Godwin coming back soon, is there enough targets to go around for Egbuka, or should I sell high? So in terms of rookie panics, we've got the awesome category, and Emeka Egbuka is obviously at the top of the awesome category there. I don't think that you have to sell high on him, because the way that that Baker Mayfield has been producing touchdowns, and just how bad that Tampa Bay defense is about to be rest of season without Kalijah Kancey, I think they're going to be pushing a stupid amount of volume rest of season. Egbuka looks incredible. And even with Godwin coming back, it's midseason from a serious injury that required a second surgery. I would not be shocked if snaps still favor Egbuka. So I don't think you have to sell high, but this is an excellent time to try to sell him high and get good value out of it. Don't feel like you have to be rushed and do any kind of like take, as low of a deal as possible, right? Because this has been like a ridiculously popular trade question. So I see a lot of potential trade offers back and forth regarding Emeka Egbuka, and there's some good value out there. So shop him around for sure. I've seen Emeka Egbuka traded for Alvin Kamara. That's excellent. He's an RB1. upside. They're pushing volume there. They're, hey, they're not a fantastic team, but the offense is in fact moving. Spencer Rattler is keeping it going up and down the field enough to provide volume for Kamara. So I love that trade. So shop him around. There's some good offers that I've seen. Don't take the first offer. Push the value as high as you can. Yeah, good time to shop him around for sure. For sure. Oh, by the way, funny story there regarding Tampa Bay and that and Baker Mayfield there. So I live in Houston. I'm not from Houston. I'm a Packers fan, but I'm not from Green Bay either. I'm from a place without a team. I'm from South Carolina, and we don't. I grew up like when there were no care. Like when I was a kid, there was not the Carolina Panthers, so I'm not a Panthers fan, right? But I've been in Houston for a long time, and I have 2 kids, and my kids were born in Houston. I've tried to get them to like football. The oldest, I thought that I was going to get him for a second because he was like really interested in doing YouTube videos. And I was like, oh, if you learn football, I can let you do videos on my YouTube channel. And he got interested. He was like writing down stats and stuff. And then he like gave up. And I'm like, okay, well, he's not super interested. But every now and then my 5-year-old will try and scam extra bedtime by acting like he wants to watch football with me to push his bedtime back. And so he was watching the Monday night game with me. And I was like, oh, buddy, you know the Texans? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, that's your hometown team, buddy. He's like, yeah. So he's cheering for them. And then like we're watching that final drive, and Baker does that run, right? And I'm like, yes, go. And I'm like, I start cheering for Baker because it's Baker, right? And my 5-year-old gets mad at me. He's like, why are you not cheering for the Texans? And I said, oh, well, buddy, that's Baker Mayfield. He's different. Like, he's special. Like he tries hard. He's a great guy. Like we love Baker. I'm sorry. You're right. I should have been cheering for the Texans. I had to apologize to him because he got so offended that I was not cheering for his hometown team, even though he doesn't even like football. Weird. So maybe I have created a football fan out of him by telling him that he can be a Texans fan. And like, oh my God, buddy, we can go to the game. Now he's all excited. Guess now I got to go get a Texans tickets or something. Those things are expensive. Anyway, they're expensive. Jeez, not like, man, there was a time where we used to get free tickets to the Astros because nobody wanted to go. Fair weather fans there for a while. Interesting. Back to the questions, though. From Wii Sports, Matt. Kid you not, angry Hampton owner in my league gave him to you for Brandon Aubrey. That is insane. That's great for you. But yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. Like, I mean, Hampton is even a buy low candidate now. That's crazy. Which I get because people drafted him. People overdrafted him, unfortunately. A lot. I saw rankings that were pushing him up like well above Alvin Kamara and Kenneth Walker. Just like, I don't know, man. It just got ridiculous there for a second. And while long-term, right, I'm good with Hampton. He was just overdrafted. So there's a lot of people here that drafted Hampton thinking that they were going to be getting significant production out of him right off the bat. And they're frustrated. So yeah, get out there and make those trade offers because you can get that sucker cheap. That's crazy right there for a kicker. Man, good for you. Henry Odom lost Burrow. Who would you use as a QB rest of season? Browning, Purdy, or Purdy? Let me see if you had another comment to say the other. Okay, yeah. I figured if I went down further, I could find it. Browning, Purdy, or Goff. I think Goff is the one there. I want to say Purdy if he comes back this week. I don't know if you have all those guys on roster right now. And you could wait and hold there because interchangeably, depending on the matchup, you could go Goff or Purdy. Because, I mean, we know kind of how to predict Goff, right, at this point now because at least we got the good news that week 1 was just apparently the Packers defense is just the immaculate truth now. And Detroit's offense is not an issue. It's perfectly fine. But when we're looking at Jared Goff, we do know that as the season goes on, We want to target him in those games where he's at home or in domes, right? Because when he's outside in the cold, there's just like a clear aggressive difference in production for him. Brock Purdy probably offers more stability in the long run, but not the same ceiling I think that Goff has there. So as of right now, my preference would be Goff. We also don't know what could be lingering with that Purdy injury. Like maybe, again, remember, this is a toe injury. Obviously not the same severity as Joe Burrow's toe injury, but those things tend to linger and not particularly go away. So I wonder if he could maybe be dealing with that all season. We know that Malik Neighbors has been playing with a toe injury for God knows how long, so turf toe for whatever. So I lean towards Goff on that one as the more secure route to go for sure. Awesome. Shout out to Best Ball on Call. Appreciate it. Always here to help you. From Nihal Nijar, start Judkins or TreyVeon. Judkins, yeah, will have more touches, but you're scared about that Green Bay defense. That is the problem, right? I think the Green Bay defense is for real. But in terms of volume, it's difficult to trust TreyVeon's upside at this point, especially because, again, like with RJ Harvey, these guys are dealing with, and again, this is our perfect segment. Actually, let's segue this question to our topic of rookies that we are having high panic about. And Henderson is one of those dudes. Henderson and Harvey are kind of equally, we're having that high panic about for the exact same reason of the fact that they're operating in committees. New England's is more of a committee. New England's is more of a committee in the sense that it could flip back and forth on a given week here. So we saw Ramondre Stevenson dominate in snaps in this past game. He had 39 snaps compared to TreyVeon Henderson, who had 19 snaps. TreyVeon had 3 carries. Ramondre had 11 carries. Then the problem is Ramondre also got 5 targets. That seems to be the bit of the issue there, is that it's not a traditional thunder lightning situation because Ramondre Stevenson is technically all 3. He is well adept and is excuse me, guys, a 3-down back, really, with good upside as a pass catcher here. They're also using Antonio Gibson significantly in the pass game, as were not significantly, but significantly enough in terms of snaps. So the differentiating factor there, it just makes you kind of nervous. Now, you would think, right, that Henderson is the one they, made that second round pick. They've got the investment into. They should be pushing forward with him. But technically speaking, this is essentially the same Patriots regime in theory. They just kind of took that bump in the road with Jared Mayo here. So they're still invested into Ramondre Stevenson. It's not that same kind of thing of like, new kids coming in and things switch up. No, it's the same old, really. So when I'm looking at that backfield, it's just so tough to trust what they're going to do on a week-to-week basis. Judkins has the tougher matchup there, but the amount of carries that they gave him in week 1 was kind of shocking. I thought they were going to ease him in a little bit more, and he was very successful with them compared to the other running backs. I still think there's going to be involvement from Dylan Sampson and Jerome Ford, but at the end of the day, I do think I lean towards Judkins a little bit more here in terms of the touches. TreyVeon's got the higher ceiling for sure, but Judkins is potentially the safer bet here. Same from Nihal Niger again. Have Herbert and the Fields manager just dropped him. Should I pick him up? I have 6 waiver priority. I don't know if I want to get him on waivers. Yeah, I would do that. I think I have. No, I've got. I don't think I have. No, I think I do have the combination of Herbert and Fields on one team. It gives you the opportunity to play them interchangeably in higher upside matchups there. It was good to see Herbert last week in a nice, secure matchup. Now, the bad thing is you wish you had Fields this week just because Herbert is in that less than ideal matchup with Denver. But I still think that Herbert is very startable this week, even though the matchup is bad. And then you can add Fields to your waivers or add Fields on waivers to your bench, just to give you some nice stability there as well, and the ability to platoon these guys depending on matchup here. So I would do that. I would do that for sure. Shout out to Arnold Woodley Jr. What's up? From Nihil Niger, should I pick up Kaleb? I'm pulling that one up so we can talk about the panic meter on Kaleb Johnson again. It's head for the hills with Kaleb Johnson for me. I don't think I would waste a bench spot on him. I'm shocked. I was looking at roster percentages today, and I was surprised at the high level of roster spots that roster percentage that Kaleb Johnson still has. I know there's optimism, and he was, a preseason favorite and whatnot, and to the point where people thought that he was going to, have the lead spot right off the bat. But I mean, I'm sorry, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't waste the spot right there. Warren would have to go down, and even then, so I think it would still be a very weird split between him and Gainwell at best. I just don't see it in the cards right here for him, unfortunately. It'll be very interesting to see how they approach him this week, now that Tomlin has said specifically they are going to take him off kickoff returns. So if you're not contributing there, I'm curious as to how they will choose to utilize him, because he has been non-existent in the pass game. And non-existent on the ground. It's just been, there's no level of contribution there for him. And every time he touched the ball, there was no production. It's not as if he got one carry and a nice big run. He fumbled the ball. It's not a good look for him, unfortunately. So my panic meter is extremely high on Kaleb Johnson right now. He is not a pickup for me. I would let him sit on waivers. I would rather have a usable asset there. There's lots of options really that are still out there. I was looking through, and you can still get guys. Where's my little stash list that I was making there? I mean, again, we talked about other rookie running backs that have more likelihood of falling into starting positions there. I'd rather have a Woody Marks. I'd rather have a Kyle Monangai. There are very interesting, if you're looking for, we've got all these tight end injuries. If you're looking to stash maybe a tight end, Jatavian Sanders is a super low owned tight end right now that's not getting any attention. Guys that are producing in terms of wide receiver snaps and decent volume, Calvin Austin, Kayshon Boutte, even De'Ami Brown, Hunter Renfrow, while Jalen Coker is out. I'd go like 10,000 directions of guys that are still widely available on waivers, other than Kaleb Johnson there. I mean, I would roster Gainwell before him as well. Lots of deep options out there that I would go for well before Kaleb Johnson there. And that's not even inclusive of the more shallow options as well. Guys that were at the top of our waiver wire list in terms of like looking at like Troy Franklin's and Wan'Dale Robinson's and stuff like that. Those are guys like well prioritized over that as well. Heading back to questions here from Larry. Who would you flex? Walker, Jordan Mason, Egbuka, or McMillan PPR? If I'm choosing between those, that's rough there. My preference is still man, you got me on that one. I'm not going to lie to you. You got me on that one. Let me actually look and verify. I was going to say Walker, but now I'm not entirely sure if I have Egbuka or that's close. I have Egbuka and Tet McMillan right next to each other. I think that in full PPR too, I still lean towards Walker there. It's close though, man. That's super close. You got good options there. Those are great choices to have. I would still lean towards Walker, but man, you got stacks on stacks of choices there. From Arnold Woodley Jr. on an 0-2 start. Thoughts on Mixon? Someone dropped him last waivers. Is he worth a stash? If you have the bench spot to be able to do so, yes. If not, you need to grab a usable asset there. Mixon, the problem with Mixon is that and this is speculation. I don't have any, there's no knowledge anyone has in terms of the true timeline on him. But when we've got a running back, an older running back who did not practice at all during the offseason, who was in a walking boot, who the injury was extremely vague and ambiguous for a long time, who is not out on the field right now while he is on the pup. I don't know when we can expect him to actually come off of it. There were some speculations from people, and they were just speculations, like not like insider information, right? But there were speculations that this is something that could be a serious long-term injury that lingers throughout the season and he doesn't actually play. And quite frankly, that's how I've been operating, because when I see somebody who, again, has not been on the field, that's 10,000 red flags for me. So you can stash him if it doesn't cost you anything and you've got IR or something. But if you've got him on your bench over actual usable assets, I wouldn't recommend it. There's been so little news. I like when you look at it, like we've got video evidence of Brandon Ayuk running around. I know Brandon Ayuk is coming back mid-season. I know that for sure. I know Chris Godwin is coming back. I've got a specific timeline on Jayden Reed. I know when let me do a running back. I know when Tajay Spears is coming back because I know the timeline of a high ankle sprain. I don't know what's going on with Joe Mixon. So that one right there is a no-go for me, unfortunately. What is the problem with Kyler? He won't throw Harrison the ball. Now, I will say, so first of all, he came out with a little quote this week. Not a quote. They asked him about it, and he said, we can't throw to him on every play. Some targets, or some games he'll get 10 targets, some games he'll get 3. I know it was a little tongue in cheek, but he is right on that. They in theory need to get him more volume. But unfortunately, Arizona is just not pushing aggressive volume with Kyler Murray. Hasn't thrown for over 30 attempts yet. And it's early. It's early, right? The first game was against New Orleans. They didn't have to push aggressive volume through the air. The second game was against Carolina. And I've said this and I say this again. And I think maybe this week will kind of be the determining factor from how I officially approach Carolina. I want to see this week's matchup before I make that final decision, because this week they're facing Drake London. So if they do shut down Drake London this week, then I will be able to confidently say Carolina might just be a no-go through the air. And the reason for that is that their defense is just flat out bad, right? It's a bad defense. But the problem is that if they've got one particular spot that is their strength, it's the secondary. J.C. Horn is one of the most, it flies under the radar because of how bad Carolina is. If he was playing on a team like Denver, this man would be in the talks for, awards, honestly. He's very, very talented, and it just goes overlooked. So when wide receivers match up with Carolina, I kind of look at it like, yeah. And that's, I think, kind of what happened. We can excuse week 2 in terms of Marvin Harrison Jr.'s production against Carolina, because it really is a lockdown corner kind of matchup situation, and their secondary and their safeties are good as well. So this week against San Francisco, not an easy matchup. Next week against Seattle, not an easy matchup here, but I do think we have better days ahead with a little bit more volume. Kyler Murray is not throwing for aggressive volume, but he's not wild, inaccurate, and having issues. They're just operating with him trying to be more efficient. And then them utilizing these 2 running backs, I think, is allowing them to lean on the ground a little bit more, because they're inserting Benson as well into the lineup here. So it's just a little bit slower moving offense that's not pushing aggressive volume when they don't have to. It'll be interesting to see how they do against San Francisco, but I think it's just a limited volume situation. It does not help that Trey McBride is there. It's, again, a weird situation of you've got a tight end that commands targets. Marvin Harrison Jr. is very talented. I do think better days are ahead. I wouldn't panic over that week 2 performance too much there. Not too much on him. Let's see here. Wednesday DMPs we shouldn't worry about. Everybody, it's veterans. You can't take too much stock into it. All of these injuries are going to come out that somebody was on the injury report with such and such injury. They didn't practice, so they were limited and whatnot. And 70% of them are not an actual issue there. Just team transparency. From Nighthole, start one of these. Worthy, if he plays, Hunter, Downs, or Alec. If Worthy plays, I would take that risk with him. It makes you. My hope there is that if he is healthy enough to play, they're not going to put him on the field in a limited capacity, because that would be kind of weird. Like if he needs to be a limited, just continue to give him more time. But I know that they're obviously frustrated with the wide receivers there in Kansas City. It's not clicking. They did hit Tyquan Thornton, that was cool. The first week to Hollywood Brown, all that volume, that was cool. Travis Kelce is just not Travis Kelce anymore, right? We have too many Travises. Hunter, ETN, Kelce, too many Travises. I do think that if Worthy comes in and is able to play, that he has strong wide receiver 2 upside. So that's the direction that I would go there. If not, my preference would be to go with Downs. It was good to see a nice bounce back week for him. Week 1 might have been the fact that he was dealing with an injury, a hamstring injury during preseason, and didn't get a lot of work there. From Shorty, how worried should I be? How worried should James Conner's owners be about Trey Benson? Should we keep them both as a handcuff, or is it time to ship off Conner while we can? I am pro trading James Conner, even if you have Benson, right? Because the problem here is that I do believe that the volume is going to be continued to split in a very unfavorable manner, right? So James Conner is safe in the fact that you will be able to get enough production out of him to where you're not going to have like games where he gets you 2-3 fantasy points, right? It's not like a terrible Amari and Hampton situation, right? The ground game is still very productive in Arizona as a whole. So 10 carries can get you to 10 fantasy points. It's not a massive issue. The problem is that I think his ceiling is gone. Floor is still pretty safe, not a major issue. But relying on him as an RB2 every week, God forbid you were relying him as a RB1, that's not going to happen here. Trey Benson's production is real. They were vocal about it all offseason. When a team tells me, and it's not just, it's everybody, like it came out of James Conner's mouth. He said, yeah, we're a 1A, 1B or something like that. And I'm like, oh, okay. A 1-2 punch maybe is what he called it. I'm like, okay. Now they did have to walk it back and say, no, James Conner is still the lead back, because it started to get a little carried away. But when a team tells you they're going to use a running back like Minnesota and Jordan Mason, right? When a team tells you all offseason that that's what they're planning to do, believe them. Believe the words that are coming out of their mouths here. So Trey Benson's production, I don't think it's going away. I think it's going to remain there for a while. So unfortunately, if you can ship off James Conner while you can, do it for sure, because the backfield is going to be a shared backfield. The snaps got very, very close last week. Now the carries still leaned more in favor of Conner, but the passing work leaned towards Benson. And honestly, on a week-to-week basis, I think, that could be interchangeable there. But the fact that their snaps are so similar, that is a major issue for me. So I am panicked about that one, unfortunately. I just did a video with Fantasy Pros advocating for trading James Conner. So that was an apt question there. From Alec, 122. Also, my QB was Purdy. Right now I'm planning on starting Penix, but QB's like Russell Wilson and the backups playing this week. I'm not sure who to play. I would just go ahead and play Penix. Last week sucked. We're not going to sugarcoat that. But it was a tough, difficult matchup there. So I'm not afraid of Penix as a whole. Waiver wire quarterbacks are getting super slim here. Now, again, this matchup with Carolina is mildly concerning. but it is possible that the matchup will be more of an issue for Drake London. Again, I'm kind of waiting to see how this, this is my like barometer here. It may be more beneficial for guys like Kyle Pitts or Bijan Robinson. Because the good thing about Michael Penix is that he can throw to anybody. This could be a game where Bijan gets 8 targets and just acts, absolutely ridiculous and dominates, right? God, it's a good matchup for Bijan. Really good matchup for Bijan this week. Whew. Sorry, thinking DFS in my head. But yeah, I don't mind going with Penix this week just because he has so many weapons to throw to, even though the matchup is kind of a weird one with that Carolina secondary here. So I would go with that. Minnesota's defense is a very tough matchup, so I don't fault him too much for the terrible production last week. From Arnold Woodley with the news of Fields being out, is the Bucs DST a good play this week? Yes and no. It's a stream-worthy option, right? Because Tyrod Taylor he's a veteran quarterback, but at the end of the day, he's not going to light you up. So I think it's a decent play there. I will say that they lost a very significant player on their defense in Kalijah Cansey. So I do worry that a Bucs defense that was already shaky is potentially going to be shakier and maybe get into a weird situation where they lean aggressively on the ground game and the ground game lights them up. Like I get weird vibes from this game, unfortunately. So it's a good streaming option. It's not my ideal streaming option this week, but not a bad play. Not a bad play. From Michael Benson or Michael Beeson, someone dropped AJ Brown and T. Higgins. I'm trying to pick them up, man. People in their panic drops there. Jesus Christ, that's severe. Rest of season from Night Hall. Rest of season, Egbuka or Hampton. Egbuka for sure. It's funny. Obviously, Chris Godwin, we talked about it earlier, so I won't talk ad nauseum about it. But obviously, Chris Godwin coming back here, I'm not convinced that we have to panic over the long-term value this season for Emeka Egbuka. Sorry, I just noticed that I have a trade notification, I think, on one of my teams in Sleeper. That's interesting. Wonder what that is. But yeah, I still prefer Egbuka rest of season there. And would you buy low on Judkins this week or wait a week and hope that the Green Bay defense eliminates the run? I would buy low. I think I would go ahead and buy right now. Honestly, I think people are still a little bit uncomfortable with him. It depends on the fantasy manager, right? Some people drafted him and they're extreme truthers, right? And then others are kind of like, Cleveland's awful. Quarterback situation is bad. Are there going to be goal line opportunities? Joe Flacco, is he even going to start? What happens? Is Dylan Gabriel going to get it? There's 10,000 different directions that it could go there. So if you can buy at a reasonable price on Judkins, I am pro doing that. I'm okay with doing that. Let's continue on with these questions here. From Easy E, yeah, Cleveland didn't ease in Fannin. They did not at all. Which I don't, rookie ease in is not the concern. I was surprised they didn't ease in Judkins because of the limited work that he got in the preseason. Like throwing a rookie in and using them, a 3-down back capacity and pass catching situations and pass protection. That one was a bit strange to me, but he did well. So I wasn't, it's a very interesting choice. But what's up? Ride some waves. How you doing? Stashing Isaac TeSlaa. That is a solid move there. He doesn't, when you look at snaps, when he's on the field, he's making all these crazy acrobatic catches. He's fantastic. You wish that he had gotten drafted to literally any other team that would have been able to utilize him. Instead, he got drafted into a situation where you have two extremely strong. You're never going to pass Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then Jameson Williams is just fantastic as well. So it just was such a weird. And then Jahmyr Gibbs, my God, he just got drafted into such a stacked situation. Anywhere else, he would just be, getting onto the field and getting more priority there. But the good thing is about stashing him is that if something were to happen to any of the receivers, obviously TeSlaa would step in immediately, be the clear next man up, and by all accounts, for everything we've seen, would thrive. He's so talented. Wish he had gotten drafted to another team. From Henry Odom. 10-team full PPR. Running backs are Pollard, Mason, Walker, and Hampton. My wide receivers are Lamb, Neighbors, JSN, Sutton. Should I be concerned about the running back situation? No, you shouldn't. So Pollard's volume has been great. Again, it's been great because of Tajay Spears being out with the injury. It theoretically would go down a little bit when he returns, but as we've seen, Tajay Spears just does not have the ability to overtake Tony Pollard. He is the RB1 there. And as the season goes on and Cam Moore gets, more developed, more comfortable, and in better matchups, like these have been not ideal matchups that he's had to start off the season. Do you really want to start off the season in just like Denver and the LA Rams? That was cruel. We're scheduling that for our first overall pick. That was cruel there. But overall, I do think that as we progress and Cam Moore gets into better matchups, because he has looked competent. He's not out there looking like I will say, some quarterbacks, and I don't want to pick on, I'm not going to say names because I'm not going to pick on a couple of them, but you guys know a couple of young quarterbacks, perhaps second-year quarterbacks that when things are going good, they look sharp, but when things are going bad, they look panicked. And they're out there overthrowing their targets, and they're just, you can see in their eyes, right? And I don't see that in Cam Ward. I see competent. I see confident. I see somebody that as the season goes on and he gets into better matchups, that he's going to be okay, right? So I'm not concerned about Pollard long-term, right, as an RB2. Mason, I would operate as though, we're looking at a hamstring injury that immediately went on IR for Aaron Jones. They didn't even question it, right? They didn't even let him practice to see how it went. It was an immediate done. So when we're talking about older players, right? And it doesn't happen every single time because remember, Mike Evans went down with a hamstring injury last year, came back, was perfectly fine, no issues, right? But let's look at a Cooper Kupp. Hamstring injury, comes back, doesn't look like himself rest of season. I anticipate that Aaron Jones, considering he's a running back and considering the workload and age and whatnot, my best bet would be is that this is a lingering issue for him. So I think that you can operate with Mason and Kenneth Walker as your 1 and 2 there for a while. And I trust what we saw from Kenneth Walker last week. Week 1, guys, I told you, Walker didn't play all preseason. And sometimes you see this with guys, if they don't get work during preseason, when they hit week 1, their usage is not often their usage sometimes isn't exactly what it will be for the rest of the season because they needed some kind of ramp up period. And that does make sense with a running back in particular. So I think that might have had something to do with why we saw Walker look bad in the limited usage in week 1. He came back and asserted himself in week 1. So I think you're fine right there. You've got your guys right there. You've got 4 guys that have the job, right? And 2 that you can put into the starting lineup right now, and Mason and Walker. By the way, Mason is a great start this week. Great start. Regardless of Carson Wentz being at quarterback. So you've got 2 guys that you can feel comfortable with starting here as your 1 and 2, and then 2 other guys. So no, you're good. I don't think you need to sell a receiver. You're stacked at receiver, quite frankly. Yeah, you're good. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Nighthole was going to pick up Kyle Monangai, but feel like he only got touches in garbage time in that blowout. Yeah, it did game script too, but they did say, Ben Johnson did say before that his goal was to get more touches for Kyle Monangai. It just so happened that it, was a garbage time opportunity because they got beat like a drum, unfortunately. But yeah, no, I do think he's a long-term good bet there. Where in my rankings do I have Wilson this week? I have him at wide receiver 13. And if that seems like it's a little high, that's one because of the matchup, right? Matchup is still excellent against Tampa Bay. Even though I don't like the quarterback situation, unfortunately, with Tyrod Taylor, it's still a good matchup there. And then After that, you get into this weird range of guys like a DK Metcalf, Lad McConkey, AJ Brown, where things start to get a wee bit shaky for him. So I'm still okay with yeah, and then like maybe I might move a Deebo Samuel up if Jayden Daniels does play. But for me, Garrett Wilson is still a must start this week. So he's my wide receiver 13. And then looking at consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros, it's the same. Everybody has him in that range too. Yeah. You got to start him. Target share is insane. Nobody else is catching the ball. Targets will be there. Targets will be there. From Sam Floyd, was Brown and Swift for ETN? Was Brown and Swift for ETN, Mason, and Williams a good or bad trade? That's a great trade. I like that. I know that people are concerned about Travis Etienne in terms of the way that Bashal Tutin looked, but we got to remember Bashal Tutin looked good, but so did Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne didn't look like a man that is going to the bench anytime soon. So I think they're a fine 1-2 punch. He's still dominated in snaps. Jordan Mason, again, I just talked about that long term. I think he has got an excellent opportunity in Minnesota with the injury to Aaron Jones there. And it was interesting because we did see Mason used as a pass catcher. So that was kind of cool. And then Javonte Williams, I've talked about him a lot. He genuinely looks like a different back. He looks fully healed. And I genuinely believe that it was just that it took him a little bit longer to heal from that ACL. So that's his job. Nobody's stealing it. I feel very confident in that one right there. So I like that trade for you. I like it. What defenses are we streaming this week other than the Falcons? Let me see here. I like... Now, I will say Falcons is interesting. That's right. Falcons is interesting because AJ Terrell is dealing with a hamstring injury. So we do have to monitor that one right there. But Raiders is interesting if Daniels is out. Again, Bucs is interesting as well with Fields out. Kalijah Cansey injury is an issue, but I still think it's very worthy of a streaming option there. And then Colts defense, but I can't remember what ownership is on Colts defense off the top of my head. But those are the ones that I am most interested in. From Easy E. Superflex, standard, 3 wide receiver league. Quarterbacks are Bo Nix. Oh, no, quarterback is Bo Nix. Bijan Robinson is the running backs. Josh Jacobs. Wide receivers, Brian Thomas Jr., JSN, tight end, Jawan Johnson. And then the Superflex quarterback is Trevor Lawrence or Sam Darnold on the bench. Jawan Jennings, Ramondre Stevenson, Quentin Johnson, J.K. Dobbins. Should I switch out Jennings with BTJ? I would not. I'm still rolling with BTJ. I know it feels uncomfortable, right? But at the end of the day, the targets have been there. The man had 12 targets last week. He failed to catch a significant amount of them and had drops there. I don't know how much I buy into the wrist injury thing from Liam Cohen, but he practiced in full, did have that wrist injury designation. So we'll see. But I'm still risking it there with JSN or with Brian Thomas Jr. I think you should keep the lineup as is for right now. From G Medina, hi Tera, need a replacement quarterback for Daniels. Here are my choices: Browning, Rodgers, Penix, Wilson, or Geno Smith. Love your YouTube channel and thank you. I appreciate that. I believe that I might have. Let me check my quarterback rankings and see which one that I have highest. I have Penix highest on that one. Yeah. Penix is the one that I would go with. And then my next highest ranked quarterback is Geno Smith. Just because, again, like the Washington defense is good, but it'll be interesting to see how the game flows if Marcus Mariota is the quarterback. But preference there in terms of feeling a little bit safer. I know last week was frustrating, but Penix is the guy that I would go with for sure. From Ronaldo this week, Zach Charbonnet or Amarian Hampton. My preference there is to go with Amarian Hampton. Charbonnet did get carries last week. It wasn't as if Kenneth Walker phased him out of the offense completely, but it feels like we're going back to where we were last year, where Charbonnet's production wasn't really usable on a standalone basis there. So I'm pumping the brakes on Charbonnet a little bit there and going with Hampton. From Easy E, love your takes and appreciate your opinion. Thank you. In Superflex, should I start Sam Darnold, Trevor Lawrence, and then start BTJ or Jennings? Yeah, BTJ on that one. And then between Darnold and Trevor Lawrence, I still have Trevor Lawrence higher. I've got Trevor, let's see, at QB 18 here. Houston's defense obviously is strong, right? And the secondary in particular is can be a problem, right? And we do get concerned about the fact that what if the secondary shuts down Nico, the other wide receivers aren't contributing? We could get Christian Kirk back, which doesn't seem like a massive thing, but I do think it's a sneaky bigger potential boost there for Houston. So maybe we get a little bit more back and forth here in that matchup between Jacksonville and Houston. Again, Brian Thomas Jr., the targets are flowing to him. He's got to be more productive. I think a lot of that is not actually Trevor Lawrence's fault there. So my preference there for you would be to go with Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. and see if this stack here can have a little bit of production, maybe get a little bit of back and forth in this game. I think Houston can be competitive against Jacksonville. And their offensive line can hold up a little bit better than it has been. From Dennis, what's half the room is too empty for a quality show. Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, share the live. Now, don't share it right now because we're about to close things out here. I said I gotta go put kids to bed, but next time, share the live. That would be amazing. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've got kids. It's 8:00 here. Technically, it's supposed to be an hour show, but there's no time limit. I can go however long I want there. But I do have kids to get to bed, and as I said, I've got that Gen V season 2 to start watching tonight, because of course. From Easy E, grab Judkins off waivers week 1. Nice. He will pay off. Yeah. And then from Kai, should I start Jalen Waddle or Quentin Johnston full PPR? Regardless of this injury situation with Waddle, which whenever Waddle is dealing with an injury, it's tough to trust him to play throughout the entire game, regardless, even if he is active. But Quentin Johnston is my preferred start there. I believe it. I believe the target distribution and volume that we are seeing in the Chargers. I think that we always say that they want to be run heavy. I think that they're letting this be a very balanced offense. They know that Justin Herbert is just clicking on all cylinders. The wide receiver core is stacked at this point, right? Heading into the season, now granted, this was before Keenan Allen was signed, right? I was pumped. I know y'all I think y'all were pumped, but I was pumped about Trey Harris and Keandre Lambert-Smith because they were showing out, right? And now we're sitting here looking at this receiving core. Our rookies aren't even being utilized because the starting receivers are just dominating there. Sucks for Lad McConkey, right? But Keenan Allen has just been an absolute monster. Quentin Johnston, just the improvement. You see the improvement in him. I'll give him that because for all the criticisms that we have had over the years regarding him, his drops, sloppy play and whatnot, you can see the improvement in him, and you can see that his coaching staff truly believes in him and the opportunities that they've been giving him. So I believe in the production that Quentin Johnston has been having. I think it's going to stick. It's working out. He looks good, man. So I would prefer to start Johnston there. From Shorty, have the Packers finally turned the corner and realized how talented Kraft is, and they should get him the ball, or are they just going to be the typical Packers and someone new seeing targets? I believe that Tucker Kraft is essentially the wide receiver 1 of that offense. To me, he is so underrated as a as a tight end from a receiving perspective, and then he can block too. Just a complete tight end there. And honestly, they're still going to obviously utilize. We'll see people pop up in there. I did have Romeo Doubs in my waiver wire column, just because, again, when you're looking at it, they are going to spread the ball around. But ultimately, I think that type of production that we're seeing out of Kraft, I think on a week-to-week basis, that's what we can come to expect there. This is his ascending moment. I'm so excited for him. Shout out to Derek Lincoln. Dan, Goddard, if he's healthy, or Fannin. If Goddard is healthy, I could lean that direction. But for right now, plan for Fannin. From Arnold. Oh, from Arnold. What's up? Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. Kobe, Javonte Williams looks great. Someone offered me Hampton for him. What are you thinking? Honestly, my preference there is Javonte. I know that's not a popular take there, but I think it is his job. And when both for offensive situation for both teams is good, so I think we can kind of put that aside. You want the running back and the opportunity with more goal line opportunities. I think they're both fine. But the problem is that, again, Hampton and the workload that he has with Najee Harris, I do think that Harris is going to continue to contribute in that backfield for him. He's just the guy that coaches like and trust, right? Reliability is a big thing. Hampton, that fumble that was erroneously charged to Justin Herbert, by the way, that was not cool. Ultimately, Javonte Williams is the guy that is dominating his backfield, and I don't think that's going to change. Falcons DST should be top 5, if not, or top 10, if not top 5 in fantasy. With James Pierce and them pushing forward as they develop, I think it could get there. I thought it would be a shaky beginning for them because they're relying on so much youth. And as the season progresses, they can pull things together. Kind of similar, not calling them a Philadelphia defense, obviously, but saying similar to Philadelphia in the fact that it took Philadelphia's secondary a while to develop when they had the 2 rookies starting last season. So when we're looking at the Falcons defensive line and the investments that they've made, it's going to take that youth some time to really pull together. But once it does, I think it could be magic. I love the way that they drafted this year. No, it's a good comment there. TeSlaa is scared of Houston, shuts him down. Do we have faith in any Dolphins player going into tomorrow's Thursday night game? Always Devon Achane. Always. Anybody else? Tua is still a wide. Not Tua. Tyreek is still a wide receiver too. Tua is a desperation streaming option if you have to. But really, the only one that we trust there ultimately is Devon Achane there. And then last comment here from Lincoln, subscribe and hit the thumbs up for you, Miss Fantasy. Thank you, Derek. I really appreciate that. You guys have been a great crowd here. Great crowd. Thank you, Kobe. Thank you, Easy E. The chat has been lit and you guys have been amazing. Thank you for the follows and all the likes as well. And I'm here same time, every single Wednesday, 8 p.m. EST? Yeah, I'm on Central Time, so sometimes I get a little confused. 8 p.m. EST, here with you live on YouTube every single Wednesday for the remainder of the season and probably during the off season too. We'll see how that goes. But by the way, guys, again, it is a podcast, right? The Dear Miss Fantasy podcast that we stream through the YouTube channel as well. So if you're watching live on the YouTube channel, please make sure that you're also subscribed to the podcast, the Dear Miss Fantasy podcast. That would be amazing. And then also shout out to Player Profiler as well, who we stream through. So thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. But that wraps things up. Of course, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I see I got one more comment here from Jordan. I'll get it in real quick before we close things out. Should I trade Mike Evans and Courtland Sutton for Travis Etienne and T. Higgins? If you need a running back, I don't hate that for you. But with the injury to Joe Burrow, that does make me a wee bit uncomfortable. But if the goal there, if you're stacked at wide receiver and your goal there is to get a running back, I don't hate it. I just worry about the consistency for T Higgins ultimately. But that's it, guys. That wraps things up. If you have any questions heading out for the rest of the week, as always, just drop them on any one of my YouTube videos on my channel at It's Tera Time, and I will get to them, of course. But other than that, thank you for tuning in, and good luck with your lineups. I appreciate you all tuning in, and I will talk to you again next week.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.